these period products permanently in all 221 gender-neutral, women's and disabled toilets. One of the takeaways from the report was, one of my suggestions was that we needed to actively challenge the stigmas and taboos around periods, which fuels period poverty. And so then grew the period positivity campaign, which is all about being open about our periods. And although it has positivity in the title, it's not about never ever slagging off our periods and pretending that the pains are nice and we really enjoy them. It's just about being open about it and not feeling ashamed, secretive about our periods. So yes, so that is the period positivity campaign, which has been going for over a year now. And now we have the environmental, which Emma is now going to talk to you about.
Oh, hi everyone, I'm Emma, and I'm just going to go over the environmental campaign that I started last November. So environmental is all about raising awareness of the plastics that are in period products and showcasing the solutions, with the main focus on reusable products. We recently ran a Make Your Own Period Pad workshop during John Moore's SU's Sustainability Week, and it was great to inform those who attended about the impacts, the environmental, the economic, and possibly the physical effects on our bodies, those sorts of impacts. And I also introduced the people who attended to some of the products that aren't as well known, such as the tampon liner. So yeah, and we want to do more work on campus when we're allowed to go back to raise awareness, and we'll have posters and hopefully do more workshops then. And with this event, I'm hoping to create a safe space where we can all talk about periods, their products, and sustainability in general, as well as to debunk some myths that surround reusable products and periods. And there's a little poster I made. So next slide, please. So yeah, we had a competition over last month, which finished at the start of March. And I wanted to engage with JMSU students to see what artwork and writing they would create around periods and how periods make you feel, how you think of them. We were lucky enough to put a prize together, a hamper, and thanks to Joe, we were able to provide the winner with a starter set to reusable products. So on the right there, you can see some of our entries. I think they're amazing. So yeah, hopefully when we go back onto campus, we'll be able to do a little display in the Student Life building with all maybe like digital copies of everything that people have created. So on the next slide, we have the winner by Nicola. So I really like this one. I love the colours of it. It sort of reminded me of somebody like riding out a wave, almost like riding out your period, or maybe on the other side it's more about like sunbathing and just being chill. I don't know, but I don't know what Nicola thought of when she was doing it, but I really like it. So yeah, next slide please. So moving forward with the environmental campaign, alongside Amber and the Student Union, want to continue to provide eco-friendly period products in all of the toilets on campus, and to carry on with the period positivity campaign. At the same time, when we're back, hopefully put up posters informing people of the alternatives to disposable products and the impacts that those are having. Well, the disposable products are, and then along with the benefits to switching to reusables. We held the Make Your Own Period Pad workshop recently, and that was easy to do online and will be great to do in person again. So it'd be wonderful to do that and hopefully create like more safe spaces to talk about periods, as well as stigma and accessibility around them. So yeah, so we'll move on to today's main event, and I'll introduce you to all our panelists. So first of all, we have Joe, who's Head of Customer Services at Cheeky Wipes, one of the country's leading brands in reusable period products and other products as well. Joe is super knowledgeable and is known as Chief Happiness Officer. And then also Joe offered the reusable starter kit for our competition, and it's amazing to be able to work with her for this. Then we have Jasmine, who leads all the plastic-free period work at City to Sea, a non-for-profit organisation committed to reducing plastics and our oceans. Jasmine works to increase the accessibility of reusables to all menstruators. And then finally, we have Dr. B Hughes, who is an artist, a researcher and a lecturer at LJMU. Their recent research focuses on embodied experiences around menstruation and the patterns of behaviour that occur around menstruation. So it's wonderful to get to speak to you all in person, and thank you very much for joining us today. I think Amber's going to start off with the first question.
Yes, sorry, I couldn't find the unmute then. That's so embarrassing. I should have overcome that. ineptness by now. So the first question to all three of our panelists is more of a demand actually than a question, but could you please tell us about the work that you do, and what it means to you and why you do that work?
Sure. Jasmine, do you want to start with this from your perspective, or I can dive in from our perspective?
Go for it, Jo.
Okay. So we talk a lot about this. So I love the whole theme of today about kind of myth busting. It's quite difficult to say, and all of that around it. And that's something that we do all day, every day at Cheeky Wipes. We're a small run team of kind of all menstruators, so we've all got quite a lot of experience. And for us, it was kind of our range was born out of Helen, who's our founder, a bit of necessity, really. So after she'd had her first son, who's now 16, she lives down in Seaford, so near Brighton on the coast, and was pretty horrified when one day a seagull, let's say, took a used disposable postpartum pad out of her bin and flew off with it. And that kind of set her on a bit of a course. We already had our reusable baby wipes, so we'd been kind of around for a while with that, and she just thought, I can't deal with this. This is disgusting. She lives by the sea. She's constantly seeing stuff washed up on the beaches. So from her personal point of view, that's kind of where we went in that direction. And many of us on the team have teenage daughters, lots of whom who have started their periods. And we kind of know from our lifetime of using products where they've ended up. You know, I'm nearly 48 and I've only been using our reusable products for 7 years. So I can't imagine the damage that me personally has done. And you kind of look at our kids and where they're growing up and what we can actually just kind of put a stop to pretty quickly and have quite a big impact, even though it can be quite overwhelming to feel that way about kind of stopping that. And we know that as a business, through doing kind of the baby wipes, reusable makeup pads, reusable breast pads, and all the reusable period protection, we estimate we've saved kind of around about 80 to 85 million disposable products, from wipes to makeup pads to breast pads to period protection, from going into landfill. And that's since 2016, and we've been going with wipes since 2015. Since 2012. So we are really, really passionate about just stopping all of that going into landfill and educating kind of the next generation, not just of our kids, but also them kind of spreading the word into their schools and their environments as well. So it's something that was born a little bit out of necessity, but led us to kind of continue where we were going with it. And we know that, you know, we kind of try and educate through our social channels as well about, you know, the amount of plastic that is in disposable pads, and something like 5 plastic bags in a pack of maxi pads, disposable maxi pads, the plastic that is used in tampons to keep them together. And it's not, you know, and it's really, we're so passionate about kind of getting out there and educating that we, you know, we'll do whatever we can to kind of start people on that journey. Also, you know, we get emails all day from ladies my age and menstruators my age saying, oh, I wish I discovered these years ago. I'm like, you still have time. You've got time. You know, there's just, oh, I'm 40 and my daughter's just started using it. I'm like, you have loads of time. You know, I'm 8 years down the line and I don't think I'm finished yet. And so in those last 7-8 years, it's already, you know, made that impact. I think I've run a bit off topic there, but anyway, I get a bit passionate, a bit excited.
No, that's absolutely fine. That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Jo. I will think about that seagull story for years. I can see it so vividly. I wasn't even there. But thank you for that introduction.
That's all right.
Would you like to follow on then and telling us about what you do and what it means to you?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I also have a pad story just to start with this. So my background is actually in ocean research and education. So I used to do quite a lot of surveying in the water, and I was once surveying manta rays, where you have to be kind of looking down into the water and then diving down underneath to take pictures. And I was really focused on what I was doing, head down in the water, snorkel on, when this thing like whacked me in the head, and I looked up and it was a period pad, and that's the first time that I've kind of experienced period product waste in the water. And I had no idea back then that I would end up doing this work, but it seems like it was a sign of what was to come. So moving on to what I do, what City2C does. As it's already been mentioned, we're a campaigning organisation, and we've run a campaign called Plastic Free Periods since 2017. And at the time, it was still kind of very shocking to be talking about periods in the press. And it was a particularly kind of new topic to be talking about the ingredients of products and plastic in those products. So we've got a few different goals with our campaign. Partly, we just want to raise awareness of the fact that there is plastic and all sorts of ingredients in our period products that people don't know about. Secondly, that there are so many amazing solutions and kind of alternatives to those plasticky products, like cheeky wipes. Then we also want to make sure that those alternatives, those plastic-free and kind of more health-friendly products are available and accessible to everybody, because it's obviously great to have sustainable products, but it's not going to be long-lasting or be able to spread widely and have the impact we want it to have if not everybody can access them. And then the final thing is to do with changing flushing behaviour. So I imagine we might touch on this in a little bit, but one of the main reasons that period products become plastic pollution is to do with people flushing them. So we want to kind of make sure that there are bins in every bathroom and that people are putting their products in the bins and not down the toilet. And we basically do this by kind of working with brands, working with retailers, encouraging them to stock more products, a full range of products. We train schools, we also lobby government, we work with influencers, the NHS, so it's like a really broad campaign to kind of tackle this from lots of different angles. Thank you.
Thank you, that's so interesting, and that is very helpful insight into kind of what you are trying to achieve and things. You know, with the flushing thing, I actually for so long have wondered, like, why do we all think we should just flush tampons? Like, what? And I read so many different packagings on, like, to see, does it say I should flush this, like when I used to use tampons? And it doesn't say that anywhere. I don't know where that has come from, and it's just something that people do. I did know a girl once, I don't know her now, and she used to, this isn't the reason I don't know her now, it was in school, but she used to flush the whole applicator and everything, and I remember being mortified by that. So yeah, it's definitely yeah, more people need to not flush those things. And then last but definitely not least, we have Dr. B Hughes. So B, please may you tell us about what you do.
Thanks, Amber, and thanks for inviting me. So yeah, I'm B, and I am a lecturer in media culture and communication here at JMSU. And my PhD, which I finished last year, so I'm still getting used to being called doctor, it's very strange, was on menstruation. So I come from a very different kind of perspective, I suppose, in a couple of ways. Although I just wanted to, before I talk about myself, I also think that the flushing thing is linked to stigma, which we're going to talk about later. Yeah, my research is about menstruation and kind of what we call menstrual normativity, and how we can primarily through, well, I'm an artist as well, so primarily how artists can kind of expand the borders of menstrual normativity. So what we consider to be the norms of menstruation, what we've been kind of socialized and kind of socially educated into believing about menstruation. So my research has a few different strands to it. So there's the art side, where so during my PhD I made, and my whole menstruation research kicked off from sorry, I haven't been at work for a week, so I'm not very good at speaking clearly. I turned my brain off completely. So I have always had really painful, horrible periods, and then I just started making artwork about it, which led me to do the 6-month project where I did a print of my vulva onto fabric every day for 6 months, and like with this acrylic paint. And then if I was having a period, that ended up on the work. Anyway, so I made this work, and it's like this huge monster, like each scroll's 3 meters long. It's kind of not really very easily displayed because people go, it's got blood on it, it has to go in a case. It, you know, it's enormous, but so I've kind of been, this led me to, at some point in 2018, putting 240 digital prints of artwork in an exhibition on the wall in the building that I worked in, which I didn't realize was possibly not not the best thing to do until I just put it all up. I was like, oh yeah, that's my vulva and that's my boss. You know, that security guard has just realized what that is. So that was quite funny. So yeah, that's where I kind of, this like one thing of just started making this project led to many things. And then the other strand of my research is around kind of not just looking at menstrual and gendered norms and stigmas, but thinking about how we can kind of queer menstruation, as you can tell from my pronouns, I'm non-binary, and kind of thinking about, okay, well, how do we make menstruation more inclusive? How do we kind of tackle all these built up stigmas to make everyone feel more comfortable, including people who are not cisgender and menstruate. And that's kind of, I suppose, you know, different types of products or kind of menstrual management solutions that are not disposables also are really important in that, from kind of a sustainability perspective, but also in terms of kind of being comfortable with your body, and all of these things come together. I think when you try and think about menstruation a little kind of critically and kind of from a kind of body literacy perspective as well as the environmental side. I just waffled loads there. Yeah, this is what happens when you make me do things in the holidays.
No, that's me. Every conversation I have ever is just me waffling, just a stream of consciousness that no one understands. No, thank you so much. I have actually seen so much of these artwork and know exactly the vulva printing that they are referring to, and it is just so fascinating. So yes, I'm going to pass on to Emma for the next question for our speakers.
Okay, so the next question is, can you tell us about the environmental impacts of disposable period products and potentially things that people might not know? If anybody has anything that comes to mind?
Do you want me to start that?
Yes, please.
So I think Joe's already kind of kicked us off a little bit with that by mentioning that 1 pack of period pads contains about the same amount of plastic as 5 carrier bags. So that's is the equivalent of about 5 carrier bags. And that's kind of shocking, but I guess less surprising because it's more obvious with pads, like they feel kind of sticky and plasticky, right? But people are generally much more shocked to hear that tampons also contain a plastic weave throughout the tampon itself. Then there's also plastic in the string. And then obviously if you've got applicators as well, then they're often single-use plastic. And yeah, as I kind of mentioned briefly, the big environmental problem with this is that all of those things should be going in the bin, but instead lots of it being flushed. So every single day in the UK, we're flushing about 4.5 million pads, tampons and liners. And there are research has been done on why people flush them, and it's kind of a mixture of a lack of education, so literally just not knowing what to do with them and thinking, oh no, where can I put this, especially if there's not a bin, and thinking it's just going to disappear when it goes down the loo. Then we've also got the kind of taboos around periods where people are a bit afraid of other people knowing that they're on their period, and so they just want to make it disappear. So also if the bin doesn't have a lid, there's that fear that someone might see your period product and know you're on your period, which is of course obviously like totally normal and natural, but there's a lot of embarrassment and kind of stigma still around that. And then there's also stigma around bodily fluids in general. So people kind of not wanting to be in contact with their period blood, and again, just doing the quickest and easiest thing. And as a result of all that flushing, period products are now the 5th most common item that are found littering European beaches. So period products are more common on our beaches than single-use coffee cups, straws, single-use cutlery. And obviously those things get quite a lot of press, whereas period products are not spoken about anywhere near as much because periods are still a bit of a taboo subject. So it's really important that we've got bins in our toilets, and not just the ladies' toilets, also gender neutral toilets and the men's toilets as well. And as well as the kind of single-use plastic pollution problem, products that use single-use plastic are obviously using virgin plastic often, which means that it's linked to fossil fuel extraction. So this bigger picture of climate breakdown. And there are also other ingredients in these products, like chemical fragrances and plasticizers, things which we know kind of tend to mimic hormones. So as well as the environmental side, there's also a few concerns around health as well that I think there's been nowhere near enough research done on, as with lots of reproductive health issues, but it's something good just to be mindful of, I think.
That was great, thank you. Yeah, when we're reading about different things, especially on the impacts it can have on your body and different chemicals, and it was quite scary to read about all that stuff. Does anybody else have any impacts that people might not know about, or add on to what Jasmine said?
B, I was wondering if you could elaborate more on what you hinted at earlier about menstrual normativity and how that feeds into flushing, for example.
Yeah, of course. I'm just going to apologise because my dog has come back in the room and is snoring. So if you hear like strange pig noises, it's the dog. So yeah, I think we've got like all of these various kind of cultural and social beliefs and norms that kind of affect the way that we behave around periods. You know, all these things that, sorry, shake the dog a little bit. That, you know, make us think they're dirty, make us think that they're kind of something that we need to hide and be ashamed of. So menstrual normativity is just a term that we use to kind of encompass all of those different things that come along kind of tied to menstruation. And there's lots of different kind of academic work that kind of interrogate this from different angles and try and kind of think about it in different ways. And menstrual normativity is quite a new term to kind of encompass all of that. So Victoria Newton, who is based at the Open University, wrote a brilliant book a few years ago based on her PhD research called, what was it called? I will look it up in a minute and put it in the chat because I forgot what the book's called. But it's kind of about what she calls menstrual folklore. So not as in kind of fairy tales, but as in the kind of everyday kind of knowledge that we have about menstruation. And she did research with kind of school children in Derbyshire, actually, and did this kind of quite detailed ethnographic study of what these young people believed about periods and what they knew about them, and kind of really kind of brought together a lot of the things that we kind of just have as kind of received wisdom about periods and how we behave and all those different things. So I think, you know, menstrual normativity is like kind of just there in the background, but it's also kind of reinforced in lots of different ways and kind of from all different directions. So in my research, I look at advertising. So obviously, until very recently, you know, we all know that they showed menstrual blood as like blue liquid in advertising. Mabel. Sorry, my dog's called Mabel. I'll show her to you at the end. And you know, medicine and medical discourses produce all these other kind of notions we have about menstruation that are not necessarily very accurate. So this idea of like this very kind of to expect a standardized kind of period that you have every 28 days, it lasts about 5 days, you know, all these kind of things come through kind of very, you know, different directions. So like popular culture, TV and film, until very recently again, because there have been some kind of shift in recent years. If menstruation was portrayed, it was usually kind of to show that the character was irrational. If they had their first period, it was like some sort of traumatic event. All these sorts of like really obvious tropes that we know about, you know, all these things that we believe about periods that kind of, yeah, okay, so a lot of people's first period can be a bit traumatic. It's not the most fun thing to happen, always, but yeah, there's never any kind of like more nuanced stories that we see sort of everyday in everyday culture. I think medicine is a particularly bad one. So my research, I mean, I have always had really awful periods, and it haven't got endometriosis, but it took me bang on 7 years to get to the diagnostic laparoscopy for that, which is like the average time it takes. And now they're like, well, you haven't got that, don't know what it is, just deal with it. So I'm like, oh, thank you, that's very helpful. You know, I mean, I have managed to not be discharged from the hospital, and I'm like, can you just check me again? But yeah, so there's this ongoing thing where people are not believed about their bodies, and their, you know, that you should be in excruciating agony every time you have a period is just so normalized. And doctors are just like, that's just what happens. Just deal with it. I'm like, really? Do we really? Yeah, and then yeah, the norms of, sorry, I've done another waffle. I'll just say one more thing and then I'll be quiet. Sorry. Like the kind of medical norms that we also get reinforce using things like disposable products. So for my PhD, I did a kind of comparative study of 3 online medical advice sites, which I call like everyday medical text. You know, it's where, you know, you don't phone your doctor straight away, do you? You Google it. And only, so I looked at NHS Choices, which is the main NHS website, patient.info, which is kind of used by, it's got 2 strands, like a public facing one, and then this one that's for clinicians that doctors often use when they're in kind of GPs use it often. And I looked at Boots WebMD. So Boots and WebMD in the UK used to have a partnership. They don't anymore, and I couldn't find out why they stopped. So it's just WebMD again now. But that was the worst one. And that one only talked about menstruation in relation to fertility, which if you're like a young teen and you want to find out you're having a quote unquote normal period or not, it being linked completely to pregnancy is not very helpful, you know? And all of these sites, only one of them, I think it was the NHS one, to be fair, mentioned anything that wasn't a reusable product, wasn't a disposable product. So they had a brief mention of a menstrual cup, but that was it. And none of the other websites mentioned anything other than you can get some pads and tampons. So this also reinforces what people kind of believe they need to use, and, you know, fuels the kind of not very good capitalist world of big brand menstrual products as well. So I think I sort of got to a point there. If you want to know more about menstrual normativity, you can read one of my papers. And I'll put a link in the chat in a minute as well to an excellent free book called The Critical Palgrave Guide to Critical Menstruation Studies, which came out last year. And it's like, got about 50 chapters, but you can read it all for free online, which is amazing. So I'll put it in the chat if anyone's interested, and you will find anything you want to know about periods is probably a chapter about it in that book. So I'll put it in the chat and let other people speak.
Brilliant, thank you so much, and make sure you do plug your articles as well that we can read. And so then the next question for our panelists is, which I think is a nice segue from what we was talking about, is do you think there is stigma around reusable products, and why do you think this is?
I can answer that one. Yes, there is, and I think it's kind of linking onto what B was saying, is that B and Jasmine were saying about when people are menstruating, is not only do they not want other people to know that they're having a period, but sometimes they can't cope with it themselves, and it's just a very quick fix of fold it up or whatever it is, put it in a bag, put it in the bin and move on, because it's a very quick, this is inconvenient, I need to get into the toilet or get to a changing place, get the job done and get out. And it's a real education to say, okay, well, it's a minor inconvenience, but it doesn't have to be, you don't have to not face it. And I love the idea of pictures of B and their vulva and with the blood on it. And I just think that I went to an event a couple of years ago when I could go in person called No Bloody Shame, and it was absolutely brilliant. And it kind of talked about all this there. It's like, it's blood, and we talk about this all day long, whether it's within our team, whether it's with customers. It's just blood. It's just blood. And if you cut your knee, you wouldn't be embarrassed running to the toilet, and you wouldn't be, you know, you'd kind of be a bit like, oh, I've cut it, there's blood everywhere, and I'd carry on. And what we try and do is try and educate from, you know, from a younger age, from teens and tweens. You know, we get emails from customers that their kids are 9 and they've started their period, and you know, they're only young and in primary school, and you kind of think, okay, well, you don't want them to be embarrassed, you don't want them to feel like they have to run off to the toilet. And we talk about things like, if you're going to go with reusable products, there's no rustle of the plastic when you're in the toilet. So if you still don't want someone to know, that's fine, but it's kind of quite a discreet way of doing it. And we're just trying to say, and it's fine, and it's okay, and here's something to just fold it up in. And our pads, particularly, you kind of fold them up on themselves and pop them closed. And Jasmine will know this from the stuff that we've worked on together with City to See, is that, you know, we make it as normal as possible, as easy to use as possible. And I think that's where the other stigma is like, oh my God, so I've got to carry something around with me that's got my blood on it. It's like, well, yeah, just fold it up, put it in a bag, in a reusable bag, and take it home and deal with it. And when we're able to go out and do our exhibitions and talk to customers, honestly, we talk all day long about it. And, you know, I've often got a wet bag of pads with me that are, you know, used but washed. And I'll often get it out and be like, you know, this is kind of 5 years down the line, it's not stained, it's easy to wash. And we're always kind of talking about it and showing the products and demonstrating. And the two ladies that look after our socials are always kind of out there saying, you know, it's fun, and talking a bit about advertising. It's, you know, I think we've got I think there's one of our ads out there, which is a lady with red lipstick on with a tampon in her mouth. And I cannot remember what our tagline is, but I think it's absolutely brilliant. Our current offer this month is for incontinence pads, and we've entitled it, "We literally take the piss for you." You know, we're not shy about doing that, and we don't do it in an irreverent way. We don't want to be seen as saying, oh, it's an easy switch, don't worry, it's fine. We want to educate, we want to kind of take people on their journey with them. And having all used the products, and all with kids of an age that are starting to menstruate or have been menstruating, we've got that experience to kind of almost like hold their hand, but not in a patronizing way of, listen, we can help you with this. We can teach you how easy it is. We can teach you how easy it is to wash them. It's not embarrassing at schools. And we are working with more and more schools across the country to supply products so that there is accessibility to products. I know we're going to go on to talk about that. And just to say that there's nothing to be ashamed of. My own daughter last month got her first period, so she's 13, and obviously she knows what I do, and she's you know, she knows the products. There's, you know, stashes of pads and pants all around the house. And I was able to say to her, listen, you know what you've got to do. And she was like, yeah, I'll just pack my wet bag, take it to school. A couple of her friends already use the products. And it's just kind of spreading that word. And she did a little video. They had BBC young reporter going into their school, and her and her friend did a video. She phoned me up, said, oh, can you come bring some products down? Because we're doing our video on this. And they went and talked to their headmistress, and they went and this was in year 7. This was before she was only in year 8 now. So she's 13. And I was just like, yeah, of course I'll come down. And I was so proud of her. And I spoke to Helen, who's owner and founder of Cheeky Whites. And it's through them kind of taking away the stigma and saying, listen, we're doing this and it's actually all right. It's easy, and it's educating. It's them educating kind of my generation. I think I'm a lot older than you guys, my generation and above, to say it's all right. It's actually easy to use. And it's almost kind of going back to, well, originally there was rags, which were, you know, pretty tricky to handle, but actually we're kind of doing that, but in an easier way, less hassle, not adding any washing, not making a big deal of it. It's not like, oh, here's my monthly rags, I've got to wash them. It's like chuck it and wash with everything else, and it's fun. And I think just touching on something that B was saying about more and more visibility of periods. And I remember watching Bridgerton over Christmas, and I think it was Daphne got her period, and I quickly texted our work group and went, they are showing proper blood in her knickers. And I was honestly, I had to stop watching it, and I texted the whole work group and just went, this is amazing. A, the show's brilliant, and B, she's got her period and there is blood and it's a good color, and it's, you know, and we were so pleased. And it's a little bit weird because it was outside of work, but you know, that's kind of how we felt about it. So that kind of thing helps to just normalize it and take away that stigma. And it's for us, and we kind of work as educators, you know, yes, we're a business, but we work as educators to kind of say it can be normal, it can be fine. And I've wittered on now, so I will hand over to someone else as well.
Yeah, no, Jasmine, would you like to talk about stigmas around reusable products and why you think there are so many stigmas, that is, not just so many reusable products?
Yeah, I'll just quickly add, because I feel like B and Jo have covered the main things. There are stigmas still around reusable products, but there's also still stigma around most things to do with periods. And I think there's just such a knock-on effect with not talking about periods enough in the first place, that means all these other things, which are really important and really affect how people experience their period and how they feel like at school or in a community or with their family, those things don't get touched on. And I do think that social media and the arts have just been amazing at tackling this. Like, we've really just seen such an acceleration in how much periods are being spoken about. And I think it's because we have some like really beautiful imagery and film, and you know, even theatre groups doing plays about periods now, and it's much more engaging for people, and people can find it on their own terms. They don't just have to rely on being told this stuff by their parents or at school. You know, there's so many more outlets now, which is amazing to see. So I definitely think the stigma is lessening over time.
Yeah, that's great, thank you. I've got much from Caitlin, so we're going to move on to the next question. I think we've touched upon it a bit before, but do you think there is an accessibility issue around reusable period products? Maybe ways we can get around this?
Can I jump in again?
Yeah, go for it.
100%, I think there is a problem with accessibility. When we first started campaigning, pretty much none of the kind of mainstream major retailers were stocking anything other than the big brand tampons and pads. And then you had like maybe Waitrose and Ocado, the kind of like really high-end retailers that were which are great, but they're at a higher price point, and you're still having to buy them every month. But since we've been targeting retailers, and there are other campaigning groups and individuals that target retailers as well, we've seen about, well, at least 15 new products added across 5 or 6 of the major retailers. So they're people like Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Morrison's, those kind of really big retailers. So it's much more accessible to people that are shopping on the high street, that kind of do their main shops there or do it online. Problem is to do with price, because in the long run with reusables you can save so much money, because you're buying something once and it could last you, you know, between 5 and 10 years. But the upfront cost of reusables can be prohibitive to people. Some people can't afford to outlay £10 in one go on something. So I think that's why it's really important that, you know, that the government is doing the scheme, which is active at the moment, providing free products for schools. I'm doing some work with the NHS to try and get them to provide free products, you know, try and get community groups providing free products and a range of products so that you can set people up with something that's going to last them for years. And another reason that we love working with Cheeky Wipes is because they are one of the most affordable, reusable period product brands on the market. And Cheeky Wipes and another one of our partners, Lunette, have a scheme that you can use to pay it every month as well, instead of outlaying it all at once, which I think is another great way to make the cost more accessible to people.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, B, were you going to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to also think about the way that, because period poverty has become such a kind of politicized and kind of helpfully in lots of ways kind of subject, but it's kind of become part of the political mainstream now. And though I think that the legislation that's been passed in Scotland is really great in terms of making sure that everyone has access to period products that need them, we think we've got to also be very careful that this type of legislation doesn't just end up putting lots of money in the pocket of disposable product manufacturers, because that's not really the thing that's going to solve period poverty at the end of the day. Like, poverty is the problem, and that, because particularly with the kind of trial in Scotland, the kind of before the period products provision bill was passed, it was kind of like there were just big blocks of money that organisations were basically given. They weren't given any guidelines. There were no real options, you know, put out. It was kind of, so I'm doing a project at the University of St Andrews with Dr. Philomore Crosswick and Catherine Spencer up there. And so we started kind of, Camilla's been interviewing before the pandemic some of the people involved in the rollout of getting period products onto the campus there. And it's just like the government gives the university a block of money, and then the people that work in the estates department, who, you know, are in charge of doing all of the sort of kind of general kind of estates related things, you know, making sure the bathrooms are stocked, they just go, right, can you get some period projects and put them in the bathrooms? And, you know, there's no support for them. It's adding an extra thing to their workload. There's no like time to evaluate what would be the best things to go in. So I'm really worried that that's the same thing that's going to happen again, potentially, with all, if these sorts of bills are passed and, you know, the provision is handed off, you know, because we're also, with the government we have, we know that this is going to end up in privatized hands, right? So I won't go on a full smash capitalism rant right now. We can have that in another session. But I just think that we've got to really be careful in how we think about this and make sure that we are able to ensure that sustainable, kind of good quality products are available, not just whatever's cheapest, whatever's most value for money, because the people that are charged with buying those provisions aren't given any help or any kind of education or any guidance. It's just like, oh, cool, we've got £3,000 to buy tampons, and then they just buy whatever they can get cheap. So yeah, it's an important thing. And I know that JMSU have been doing a much more considered approach to their kind of period product provision, which is really good. But the bigger the scheme, the more things that could potentially kind of go wrong, I suppose. So yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that. Would be good.
I will, if that's all right. So we've been working, and in Wales as well, they're really reaching out and branching out into the grants for accessibility of disposable and reusable, and there they have to spend a certain amount of their budget on reusable products, and we've been getting involved in a lot of that. And yes, from a business side it's brilliant and we're pitching in, but also from an educational side we work very closely with them before if we kind of get through that, we have long conversations, long meetings with them about what is best, what kind of products. We talk about sizing ranging from kind of younger menstruators all the way through to kind of older teens. We are in the process of, which is really exciting, creating quite specific educational resources for both teachers in primary school and students, as well as kind of free content to be able to download, ask questions, you know, accessibility, without the kind of sell behind it. Yes, we are a business, but we're also really invested in being able to get this kind of out to the wider community, and we're really proud of that work that we do, working with kind of councils, educators, to be able to say, okay, fine, you've got this money, amazing. Like you say, we don't just kind of throw it away on a shed load of disposable tampons that you're going to chuck in the toilets. Actually, let's have a conversation. Let's see where we think we can do that. If you're going with pads, okay, you need to consider bags, like reusable bags, so that the people that are using the products feel comfortable using them. And we really enjoy doing that side of the business. And it's a really new thing. We've only been doing it for about 1.5 years, and it's something we've all learned on the job. And when I say we're a small team, we've got Helen, whose business it is, and then you've got myself, and then my colleague Claire, who is the production manager, and our brilliant Becky, who's the marketing manager. I've got about 3 other people on my customer services team. There's 20 people in the warehouse, so we are a pretty small run company, and we all kind of go, right, okay, brilliant, well, this is the next thing we want to get involved in. And one of the areas as well that is slightly off track but is really interesting is one of the ladies that is on my team with customer services, she's a foster mum, and she has 2 teenage daughters of her own and 2 teenage girls that she's had with her for kind of 7 or 8 years. And we're talking to her, and she's going to start talking locally to the social care teams about when, and it's predominantly girls at the moment, are kind of moving on from their foster families out into the wider world. What do they take with them? So we're kind of going to start talking about, right, well, what can we offer as a right, this is when the girls are kind of leaving their foster home and going out, what can we give them so that they have everything they need, so that is not a worry to them when they're going out to work or to new accommodation. And again, that came out of a drunken Zoom cocktail evening where we were talking about it, and my particular lovely colleague was talking about her girls there, and Helen got very emotional and said, right, okay, we need to think about this. So Erica, who is amazing on my team and has been with us for kind of 1.5 years, went, okay, and we said, right, well, you're very well placed, you've got, you've been working with the system, and my other lovely colleague Kirsten on my team has worked in the system. So we said, right, you two work it out how we can do this and what we can offer to move on. So from accessibility, from that point of view as well, that was another area that we'd never considered, apart from a conversation that came out of, yes, a few cocktails, but actually is going to be, it's something brilliant kind of locally down to where we're based, which is down on the south coast. So yeah, so it's just that another little pocket that will make a difference to those people moving on. And yeah, and we get quite passionate about it. So yeah.
Thank you very much. And then finally, moving on to the last question, what tips would you give to someone who is trying to be more sustainable? I guess that could be in general, or maybe to do with periods.
Hi.
Go for it, Jasmine.
I'm going to go kind of bigger picture, general stuff. I think it's really important to join a group, whether that's like a Facebook group. There are so many plastic-free living or sustainable living groups on Facebook at the moment, or a real life community group, or create a WhatsApp group with your friends who also want to do the same thing. I think that it's just so invaluable to have inspiration and advice from other people, and also to kind of have those people there for when you're struggling, because it can get a bit overwhelming, and you might get a bit stuck. So I think having community is super important. And then another thing is to do with using your skills, because honestly, whatever your skills are, the kind of sustainability, environmental justice, social justice movements need your skills. So by joining a group or volunteering for organisation or something, you will learn loads which you can then apply to your own life. You'll make connections with people that can then support you, and you'll also feel part of something bigger, which is really important, I think, in kind of keeping this action going for the long term, because we are going to be in it for the long haul.
Yeah, one of the things that we always talk about, and we talk about on our social channels, is kind of small, simple swaps. So it can be quite overwhelming looking at the bigger picture. But in terms of kind of the mass kind of really forward thinking into the future, and we kind of want to say to people that you don't have to do everything right now. Start small, start by doing something that you can cope with. So we talk about potentially makeup pads. Just don't buy cotton wool, buy some makeup pads, and you're already kind of starting on that journey. And the whole thing about community is so valid, and whether it is Instagram groups or whether it is kind of out in the real world, which is so invaluable, is bouncing off and saying, okay, well, how did you get on with that? How are you thinking about that? And actually kind of, you're always going to come up against something that you hadn't thought of, and you think, oh, okay, well, I can give that a try. I can do that. And kind of starting young. And, you know, our kids, my son's 10 and he comes home from school with some amazing ideas of what they've been doing and what they've been talking about and how they can start making that difference. And it doesn't need to be all encompassing, all overwhelming, which kind of creates that, I can't do enough. Actually, the steps that you start with to kind of, whether it's going reusable products or just generally whatever it is, changing to a bamboo toothbrush, just all of those little steps that people generally in life, that I would go with kind of 90% of the population just go, oh, I can't do that much, but what can I do is X, Y, and Z. And then it can build into that bigger picture, into that feeling, that sense of purpose and that sense of worth, to be able to feel like that change is slowly being made.
I just want to, I think I totally agree with that, with what both Jasmine and Jo have said, and just like that, doing a little bit at a time and doing those little swaps is really important. So about 9 years ago, I tried to go vegetarian from being like an omnivore, and made, you know, a big pan of like lentil ragu, and by the end of the week, my partner and I were both back eating meat, because I'd just done one cold turkey, done it really stupidly, you know, and made a really bland like pan of food that was enough to feed about 100 people that we had to eat all week. It was not good. So, but a few years later, we were like, right, gonna do it properly this time, and we slowly built up, and now I've been vegan for 5 years. So, you know, you can do it. You just have to figure it out step by step. But I think alongside all the little individual things that we can do, we have to also think about the bigger picture in another way, and that is that individual people can only do so much. We can do a lot, but we also need to put pressure on big companies to be more responsible and to change. You know, we need systemic change, as well as individual level change. So if you're feeling particularly feisty, get your WhatsApp group of your friends and start lobbying the government, start arranging protests, you know, start creating social media campaigns about that, and start working with the city to be and help them do their work, because it's really important that we get that level of change. It's not only going to be done by us, even though everything we do is really important. So yeah, it's a combination, and I'm happy to help anyone lobby the government if you want.
Wow, yeah, that's all been really interesting. Thank you. I just wanted to open the floor to if any of the attendees or any of us have further questions. I know it's already 5, so I don't know if people need to go.
I actually have a question. Although, sorry, I know Hafsa, you've just unmuted yourself, so I'll let you go first. Go on, you go first.
Sure. Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to mention as well, so obviously we're speaking about sort of the stigma, the perceptions, especially from like a younger age. And I think it's really sort of valuable to mention how it impacts different communities, so different ethnic minority groups, you know, being sort of someone of a South Asian ethnicity, the way periods are sort of perceived growing up was like it was a real illness, you know, and although that isn't what it is, but I also think it does come back to, again, down to a lack of education. So if you don't have the correct language or terminology, you only know what, you know, maybe your parents have told you, and that sort of passes down through generations. So by the time, you know, I was sort of growing up and hearing it's an illness, it was like, oh, shocking. And then you grow up and you're like, what illness? I'm completely fine, like it's okay, it's just normal, and you know, it's not the end of the world. And so I think that's something to really note. Like different ethnic communities, you know, all over the world view it differently. Like in Nepal, you know, there was the cow sheds, the cow huts, and there's some really, like, there's a lot to learn from it, you know. And although that might seem so backwards and like, oh, what, like that's so long ago, it still affects certain communities to this day. And it's something that we need to obviously fight for and champion, because it's all women and children who then get affected. And another thing I wanted to just sort of add on, following on from B, what you were sort of saying, sort of like the privatization and the profiting of sort of pads, tampons. And it's really interesting because I work as a teacher, or I did, in a college, and we got like our students to discuss all issues related to period poverty. And there was one specific student who ended up sharing her experience, and she mentioned some really good, valid points. You know, who profits from women just and young girls mainly using period pads and tampons, you know, when we don't want to speak about sort of cups or the reusable products. Like, and there's certain companies that really do profit from it, and that just keeps going on again for a very long time. So I think there's some really important things to keep in mind. So yeah, there wasn't any questions, but it was just I wanted to add to that. But thank you all. That it was really interesting to hear what you had to say, and I wish this was a bit longer so I could just really just listen to you all. But yeah, thank you very much.
No, I feel like we need to do another one though, like, because there's so many things. Because I feel like I do have a question, but it is quite large, and so maybe it might not be it might not be a good question to ask right now. And it was mainly to be, because I remember you telling me ages ago, I was saying about how I think everyone should have a moon cup, and I was going on about how amazing moon cups are, and I was like, rah, rah, rah. And you were like, but you have to remember that sometimes these products aren't necessarily as inclusive as they could be, because, for example, if you've got a disability like dyspraxia, it's going to be really, really tough for you to actually use some of these products. So I don't know whether anyone wants to touch on anything to do with kind of inclusivity and how we can kind of, like, following on from your point, Hafsa, about kind of championing and helping like everybody and all menstruators be I don't know, helped to like make positive changes and positive swaps, and how we can kind of help the people that feel like they're being maybe left behind, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's kind of to anyone really.
That is a very big question. It's an awesome one. There's some stuff that we gather this from kind of feedback, and we as a small business, we make changes to our products based on feedback from customers. We can act on it quite quickly and kind of turn things around quite quickly. And one of the best bits of feedback that we get is from parents of menstruators with sensory needs on the autistic spectrum, and how, you know, they find disposable products difficult, and textures, etc., etc. We've developed kind of a couple of our styles of period pants that we know work really well. I won't say for everybody that is experiencing those additional needs, etc., but we get such amazing feedback from parents who said this is the only thing that they will wear, this is the only thing that works, and we know that a wider waistband on our pants works much better than the narrower waistband. And so we aren't, as I say, I feel like I'm going on about it, but we answer these through our live chat and our email all day, every day, and are able to say, okay, well, based on feedback from other parents that we've spoken to, this is what we feel could be good. And we send out, so, you know, I get them on the phone, and I'm happy to send out samples, say, right, try this against this, and if that's not right, and we understand the texture, and the rustling might put them off, the rustling of this particular material on our pants might not work, and the wings might feel uncomfortable. And so we love it, we love talking about it, and we're developing lots of our latest style, which is our Feeling Free, which is our kind of shorts-ish range, was developed with that kind of with that in mind, in terms of kind of gender neutral and more inclusivity. We've designed that with that community in mind, and we'll carry on doing that. And we get feedback about our styles all the time. We say, okay, fine, that didn't work. It's how we've gone from having one style of pants to 7. We want customers that want to cover up their C-section scars and it feels uncomfortable, fine, go with this style. And we've got loads of stuff that we work with and we listen to, and we very quickly talk to Claire, our brilliant production manager, go, right, we've had loads of comments about this, we need to work this out. And yeah, we work as hard as, and we try and reach as many people as we can. It's not easy, but we try and kind of reach out to that. And it's interesting, Hester, about the community side of things. So I'm Jewish, and I got my period on the first night of Passover when I was 13. So I had a house full of people downstairs, and I had to kind of go down and say to my mum, oh, and it was a massive celebration. And so I was always led to believe that that was okay, that was fine. And so, you know, my daughter got her period the eve of Mother's Day and just literally shoved her knickers in my face, went, look at this. I was like, okay, great. And I was glad she was able to just go, well, you talk about this all day long, so I'm going to show you my pants, because people send you pictures of their pants all day long, so you're going to be fine with this. But I totally get, and again, we kind of reach out to lots of different communities that you know, I have customers that have severe OCD and can't cope with the sight of their blood and washing them, and have kind of all their menstruating life have had to kind of shy away from it. And so that kind of community, we kind of go, okay, well, the whole washing of it makes it clean, and it's really, it comes from all different angles, and it's something we love. We love the challenge of it. We really love the challenge of it, and yeah, strive to provide products that kind of touch as many communities as you like, if we can. So
yeah. Wow, that's brilliant. Thanks, Jane.
Yeah, that was really cool to hear. Sorry, I just wanted to add that I think it's really important that people are thinking about people with different needs and different abilities, or you know, different disabilities, because often disabled people are forgotten and are not given any choice about what products they use. You know, we know that people that are disabled are often kind of dismissed, kind of desexualized, dehumanized, you know, not seen as, you know, having, you know, it wouldn't even occur to them to, like, potentially to a carer that they might not want to use a particular product, that they can't use a particular product. Imagine how uncomfortable if you're a wheelchair user and you have to sit in a like really plasticky pad all day because nobody like has thought about your needs. So it's really, really important to kind of have those conversations and make sure that people have choices. And I just want to plug this really good book. That's not my book, but by Robin Stewart. So it's the Autism Friendly Guide to Periods. And it's a fantastic book if you want to know more about, you know, helping people with autism. It's got really, I mean, it doesn't only focus on, it's got all different types of products. So there's a page where it kind of just like shows you very clearly how to use a menstrual cup. And it goes through all the different things that are available. And there's like all sorts of kind of little reflection points and diagrams and all kinds of things. So if you kind of wanted to, if you are on the autistic spectrum or know someone who is and want to help them, then that's a really good book. And yeah, that's quite good.
Can I just add, we did a survey last year which was specifically for people who have periods and have a disability or impairment, and it was so eye-opening, and we're kind of still working out what to do with that information and how to respond, but it's definitely, I'll just say, like, keep your eyes peeled for some stuff that's going to be happening at CTC around that soon. It's definitely a space that's just been so neglected. So yeah, I'm glad we've touched on it here.
Yeah, I feel like we've definitely covered so many different aspects of all things period, all things period positive and menstrual positive. And you know, it's one of those conversations where even just us talking about having a more sustainable period, you know, and then we lead to having a book on the guide to autism friendly periods, and it's about that kind of, it's not as hard as it might seem at first on the outset to include everyone's different voices and needs, and when actually all it takes is just for one person to mention it and for all of us to care about it, because everyone does matter, and everyone is worthy of having, you know, an equal period, and feeling comfortable and being able to, you know, have a period in the way that they want to have a period. So yes, it is. I'm going to finally, for the final time, pass on to Emma to draw to a close. But I would just like to say, like, as the the birth giver of the period positivity campaign at John Moores. I'm so glad that we had this event, and I'm so thankful for all of the speakers and all of the engagement with this, because it's just been so brilliant. And with the, like, our university and SU collectively declared a climate emergency last year, and it's, you know, and it's all good and well making declarations, but you know, there does have to be that action that follows, and this is a prime example of us doing that and being and staying true to our passions on making things better for our immediate and wider environment. So yeah, so thank you so much. And I'll pass on to Emma.
Thank you, Amber. Yeah, unless people have more questions. I was thinking before, I was like, it's already 5, or it's, you know, 15:15 now. I was like, I wish we could just carry on talking, because I'm sure we could. But yeah, so thank you all for attending, and especially our guest speakers. You've all been amazing, giving us amazing insight into what you do and what you think and what needs to be done around stigma and reusable. I feel like I've learned so much. I've like been writing notes, writing it all down. Just what maybe I could use later on as advice, and just have that conversation as well. In regards to our audience, I hope you've learned something too, maybe that you weren't aware of before, and maybe you can take on some of the sustainability tips at the end. Yeah, I feel like I need to join one of those groups now on Facebook, see what other people are doing. So yeah, look out for more campaigns from the SU, like soon next year, about to do with periods and sustainability, and got the Growing project going on as well. So yeah, all really good stuff. And yeah, thanks again for coming.
Thank you so much, everyone.